We'll start the Wednesday, January 21st, 2026 Public Works Commission.
Recording in progress.
Commission meeting. First item is the agenda itself.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Any second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye for myself. Moving on to public forum. Rob, is there anyone online for public forum?
We do not have anyone online yet for public forum.
Okay. Moving on to the consent agenda. Motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye for myself. Moving on to the Queen City Park Road Bridge.
Great. Staff's going to come up. I'll just say a few words. I really appreciate all the time the commission spent with us in November and working through this issue. And I am also pleased that we have not only moved to implement what you approved, we have gone out and engaged the public and gotten feedback. As you recall from our conversation, staff clearly said we could support technically either a stop sign or a yield sign, and we have learned, we have observed, generally conditions have worked well. There have been some PM peak hour congestion and queuing that you'll hear from Caleb about, but we've also done a survey with the public, and I felt like engaging the public in our work where we do have opportunities to get their input and listen to the public when the options are two reasonably safe options really demonstrates that we're a learning and listening organization. So thank you for your time again today on this topic, and look forward to the conversation.
Thanks, Jacob. Hey folks, I'm Caleb Manna, Associate Public Works Engineer with the City of Burlington, for those who don't know me. And just to fill in on what Director Spencer was elaborating on. So if we all recall, back in the November Commission meeting, the existing yield signs at the Queen City Park Road Bridge were changed to stop signs. As part of any traffic request, our duties involve monitoring, listening to the public, and gauging the functionality of that request. In this particular instance, we heard pretty loud and clear from residents of that neighborhood and businesses in that area over frustrations due to the increase in time delay it was taking folks to cross that bridge. It was something we more or less anticipated would happen. Now you have to stop instead of yield. Driver times did increase. Part of our work in following up on this traffic request was observing and monitoring. So I spent an afternoon, evening there and did observe some backups. We had another staff member on a separate time, did the same thing, and also confirmed some traffic delays here. So again, this is a reactive request. We want to make sure the public's happy. We're not aware of any safety issues. Going back to a yield sign, there are still no crashes. We believe it will function as intended. Another observation we did made was driver compliance wasn't stellar, I would say. So even with the installation of the stop signs, there are still a handful of folks who were sneaking through as it was a yield sign too. So I think that's about it. The request here is to go back to a yield sign. We still do expect that traffic volumes will die way down once the parkway opens in the spring. And we're hopeful this will eliminate the confusion and the problem. So thank you.
Thank you.
I think maybe just we did the survey. It did get 79 responses, and I don't know if you want to just for the record.
I'm happy to run through the survey real quick.
highlight.
It's in your packet. This got sent out via Front Porch Forum to various stakeholders, very similar to how we broadcasted public outreach in the first place. Quick little survey: how often do you travel across the bridge? So do you live or commute in the area? What time of day? Options, preference of options, yield versus stop sign. Explanation of why. Do you believe the signs have improved traffic safety? Then some general comments here. So real quick, we had 79 responses. The majority of folks are crossing daily or weekly. So we had only 6% occasionally using the bridge. Most folks are, as expected, using the bridge in the morning and evening hours. So folks like myself, commuting to and from work. And most folks, 80%, 79%, would prefer the yield sign, or the stop sign too. So pretty conclusive evidence and pretty solid response for the survey. I felt that 80, 79 was a pretty good turnout. You'll find a bulk of the public comments at the very end of this packet. Please note I did not include all the comments on the explanation. They're very similar to the bulk of the comments at the end of the packet here. Happy to share them if you'd like to see them. But I felt they were remarkably similar, so I did not include them here. And then our last question here, do you believe stop signs have improved safety compared to the yield signs? We had 67% said no. So again, public perception, folks aren't really noticing a increase as we intended that change to effectuate in the first place. The survey is now closed. I think that was it. Thank you.
Commissioner comments on this item? I'm going to start with Commissioner Matano.
Well, I think the results of the survey speak for itself. I know Public Works is not a democracy, but it seems like the residents and the users of this right-of-way might get what they want. I feel like a yield sign is totally fair, as we learned at the November meeting. So, yeah.
Commissioner Hayes?
Yeah, I wanted to say thank you for putting out the survey. It was a lot sooner than I expected. I've been traveling on it every day, and there have been some backups. I don't think it was a deal breaker. What I think I noticed, you're going to wait 30 seconds. It's not the end of the world. The non-compliance was the thing that I was hoping would decrease over time, and I hadn't seen it yet. So I just wanted to commend you guys. I think the argument that you made, it was defensible. The evaluation you initially did and presentation last time was excellent. It could have gone either way, but even just putting out the survey and listening to everyone, it does show that you're listening. You want to hear from the residents, and I am still hoping that the traffic on that road will decrease once the parkway is open, and so this becomes more of a moot point. But thank you.
Commissioner Barr?
No comments. Commissioner Davis?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I kind of echoing my fellow commissioners. I think it's good to be open to feedback and everything. I do think there are a couple things that are not accounted for. One of the things being changing it so that it was easy to follow and understand and kind of certain that what a stop sign gives you as opposed to a yield, especially for people that are not frequently in the area. So I think those people are inherently difficult to capture in a survey and maybe are not captured. I do think kind of in terms of I appreciate surveys. I think it's great that the department did one. I do think there's a bit of a bias associated with surveys of this type where people don't assume something is going to change on them. So if they like it the way it is, they're not probably going to respond. So I would not be surprised if after these change back, there are people that are saying, dang it, I wanted it to stay a stop sign. But I think being responsive and just like reacting to trying to do the right thing when you know with a reasonable amount of certainty what the right thing is, I think is good to do. So happy to support changing it back right now, and we'll see what the future holds. So thanks for the work on that. And I have been true to my word. No one of the public is here right now, but I have not crossed the bridge again since we had that meeting to try to be one fewer person congesting it. So yeah, I guess now with the yield signs I can cross again. So okay.
Commissioner O'Neill Babasha?
Hope to see you crossing. Yes, thanks so much for just being responsive. And a question I have though is, kind of what's the minimum time frame when we do any sort of new traffic pattern or installation to really test how the application is going to be used? This felt a little short, but I know that there was a lot of comments from the public. But in general, do we have some guidelines on what that time frame would look like?
I don't believe there's a set timeline per se where a traffic request or a change would be evaluated. It would typically be around 30 days post-monitoring period. In this case, too, any change, so in this particular instance where we'll go take the stop signs and go back to a yield signs, we would do what we did previously and warn that on the message board, just to make it super clear to folks that, hey, there's a signage change coming, please be advised. And we put the dates on that too. So again, I'm not aware of any set date per se. If we're aware of any issues or problems, we would continue to monitor. But again, I guess I would say 30 days is a typical time frame for that.
Okay. Thanks.
If it's involving crash data or something like that, usually you need a very long period to statistically determine trend data. For a small change like this, I'm comfortable with the 30 days. One of the other considerations is just now that there's only 2 real ways out of the southwest quadrant of the city with the parkways change on Pine Street, that it was helpful for us to respond to the PM peak congestion so as to limit any unsafe maneuvers when the level of congestion gets high.
And this was an instance where we heard loud and clear from the public that this was an issue for a lot of folks too. So we wanted to be responsive to that.
Right. I think short of building the 2-lane bridge that I saw in several comments.
It'd be great.
This looks like a great.
It's very expensive. I don't think it's in the cards right now, unfortunately.
Right. Yep, thank you.
Can I offer one more thing quickly? Just something I saw in the comments that I thought was a good idea that I hadn't considered before was someone mentioned putting on the yield sign under it like 1-lane bridge ahead or something like that. And I don't know. To me, it seemed obvious that it was a 1-lane bridge, but I'm wondering if like some of the issues maybe arose from people not thinking it was a 1-lane bridge and kind of getting themselves stuck in a spot that then created an issue. So I was curious if that might be a very low cost way to just maybe have people heed a little bit more caution.
Yeah, the sign should still be there. That is a standard condition for any 1-lane bridge too. And
Okay.
at a minimum, you would have that sign supplemented by a yield sign too. So if it's not there for whatever reason, we'll put it back when this goes to a yield sign.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Fox?
Thanks for this. I will say I had the same question as Commissioner O'Neill Vivanco about the testing time. You know, I think the observation of lack of driver compliance doesn't surprise me, but I also think it doesn't feel like quite enough time for people to adjust to that new traffic pattern. Like Director Spencer says, in different circumstances with crashes and stuff, the period I think is a lot longer. The other thing I'm hoping you can just shed a little bit of light on is like this was yes, a response to the public, but you also completed the MUTCD evaluation that you laid out in the memo, and I'm wondering if you could just speak to that a little bit for our benefit, like what the MUTCD is, like super high level, like and like that's your standard, that's your guideline, and so it's not just that we heard from the public, it's also like this standard that we have that ensures our roads meet like
And
the
that's
safety
the
level, right?
interesting thing about this particular request. MUTCD can go either way.
Yeah.
They leave it up to local engineering municipality judgment. So that's kind of the kicker here. You know, both ways are acceptable in the eyes of MUTCD. We have the sight distances. You know, you can see across the bridge. You know if someone's going to come, and that's kind of the big reason it can go either way. And that is what's written in MUTCD. There's a little section in there that leaves judgment up to the municipalities to enforce as they see best for their constituents.
I also shared the same concern. So you mentioned that has there been, if approved tonight, what is sort of the timeline for the warning and when it would go into effect? Because I think back in November, the sign was put up in advance before the commission had approved, and then if the sign was changed the next day. I'm just curious as to what the timing is.
Yeah, so just to clarify on that, yeah, so we do have the ability, I've come to understand, to effectuate this change after approval.
Yeah.
You know, we were talking a little bit before this meeting, and I think it's something we'd like to do quickly. The signage condition wouldn't be enforceable until it reaches the end of its 21-day
Oh, right,
warning
when
period.
the actual work.
So we still have the ability to implement the change.
Got it.
It just wouldn't be, you wouldn't get a ticket for it.
Okay.
That said, we talked about putting up a variable message sign with a 1-week notice and making a change after a week. Give the public the, yes, the notice that conditions will change. And then our thought is week after that goes up, we can make the change back.
Okay, great. Perfect. Thank you. Rob, is there anyone online for this item?
No one has their hand raised yet, but as a reminder to the public to raise your hand if you did want to speak. And at this time, no one is signed up.
For a motion, so moved. Second,
I'll second.
all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye for myself. Any nays? There you go. Moving on.
Thank you.
Yeah. Which streets, paving? Caleb again.
My favorite topic. Yes, so the request tonight is in relation to our CY26 paving contract. We have issued that out for bid, and our bids are due back February 5th. Part of this process, and if folks have been on this commission for in years previous, you'll have seen this before. It's something we do every year. It's something that's required by the state of Vermont under Act 34, and that's complete streets reporting. So what that really means, excuse me, is under this state statute, municipalities are required to take a comprehensive look at all modes of transportation when we go to do a street resurfacing project. Typically, that's no issue for us. What that would look like and what you would see on the street is sidewalk ramp improvements, crosswalk markings, bike lanes, traffic calming features, things of that nature too. So again, the intent is just to try to accommodate all modes of transportation as best we can. This year, however, we have a slight anomaly in our complete streets reporting request, and that is Depot Street. I'm very excited for Depot Street. I've heard from a lot of folks if they could pick one street to pave, that would be it. So we're happy to get there. It's a street that's been on our paving list ever since I've worked here for the last 8 years. So we're happy to finally get there. But as I'm sure most folks are familiar, there's no dedicated sidewalk on Depot Street. The road's closed to traffic with the exception of authorized vehicles, and a handful of folks who live at 83 North Ave, the breakwater condos, who would access the very top of Depot Street to get into their rear parking lot. Again, other than that, the road is closed. People walk and bike up and down it freely. So we feel that the cost of installing a dedicated sidewalk or transportation facilities outweighs the need to repave the road too. We're not aware of any other issues, and that's the request in front of you today, and that's the exemption to the complete streets reporting, is we will not be installing a sidewalk on Depot Street at this point in time.
If you agree.
Any commissioners have any questions or comments on this particular item?
Paving it so that we don't like,
It's pretty bad.
it's so
We
bad.
don't want people to trip and fall. Again, we know a ton of people walk and bike up it every day. So it's, you know, you could call it a shared use pass for all intents and purposes. But it is a true road in the city of Burlington. So
It's great.
Okay. Motion, Commissioner Lieutenant?
I move to approve the exemption request for municipal complete streets compliance as a part of CY26 paving contract, specifically for Depot Street.
Second. Commissioner Moore? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
great.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
folks.
Thanks, Gil.
Next up, public engagement plan. Rob.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the opportunity to come back to you a little over a year after we presented our last kind of interim update on DPW's public engagement efforts. We last came in October 2024, letting you know we were working on a bit of a refresh to the public engagement plan. At the time, it was being done in conjunction with the citywide engagement effort, and I'll update you a little bit on how that decoupled. But background for the most of the commission who hadn't been on the commission back when the plan first originated. It was written in 2017 by myself and senior planner at the time, Nicole Loesch, shortly after the 2017 North Avenue pilot, which created, certainly some concern and controversy in terms of how some of the engagement efforts by the department were handled, somewhat, unintendedly. At the direction of City Council, they did request that we put together a public engagement plan to kind of scope out how we would move forward on our communications and engagement efforts. That plan and the planning process coincided with the newly created public information manager position, which I inhabit, but also $30 million of capital bonding that became available after the 2016 vote, knowing that we would be everywhere all at once, which we still are, and that communications and engagement were going to be ever more critical for the department to maintain trust with the public. It was also written, pre-2020 census, which showed real ongoing and continued demographic change in the city. And so while we made some efforts in the early public engagement plan to note that we live in a diverse community, it's become ever more apparent after the census data. This was done at the time with DPW Commission consultation, which then voted to accept the plan in 2017 and reviewed our performance in February of 2019. And again, we did, I would consider it a mini review / update as to next steps in October 2024. At the time, the city was also undertaking a public engagement plan, kind of a holistic effort. That has stalled out, I think, given how much bandwidth everyone has, and the city globally and the administration has had to devote time to any number of crises and any number of priorities, as you can imagine. So that's decoupled. We wanted to keep moving this forward, and that's not to say that this itself won't be another interim update as best practices emerge, as administration priorities or more holistic planning efforts come together, specifically around things like language, access, and other priorities. And certainly there's planBTV 2050 going right now, which itself is a pretty holistic, multi-departmental engagement effort. So moving forward, I'll kind of present the plan itself. That was just the update. There are some core values you'll recognize of civic engagement shared last time, lives in our plan, and we haven't changed it much at all from what you would see universally in most widely accepted public engagement values. Transparency, accountability, participation, which is easy, engagement, which is meaningful, equity, respect, and having some level of evaluation to determine if we think we're doing a good job. Try to sketch out some goals we have for the plan itself. I want to see if this aligns with your priorities, of course, and so we'll take that feedback or any recommendations you have if revisions present themselves. But essentially, we want to improve public understanding of DPW services and priorities. We want to strengthen the consistency and timeliness of information across all of our channels. We can sit here and say we think we're doing a good job on most of these accounts, but there is always room for improvement. And then finally, a big strategic goal is to strengthen the two-way communication with the public, build partnerships and trust. Now that's across the board. You'll note it, I think, most prominently now, again, in that planBTV 2050 effort, where we need to build that dialogue with the public about what the city is going to look like multidisciplinarily across the board in the decades to come. try to sketch out so you understand where we kind of put our planning efforts behind as the year unfolds. This isn't really to account for any crises that emerge, new priorities that emerge, but just things that are always on our radar screen as the seasons unfold. Whether we're thinking about and transitioning from winter operations to construction project education, noting that water quality, which is a goal 365 days of the year of the department, really take a prominent perch in the public eye during prime recreation season. So spring, summer, they have traditionally been kind of crises points for the wastewater treatment plant before the recent spate of investments, but still it's on the public's mind when they're going to the beaches to swim. Shifting into late summer, fall, we've got construction, major maintenance, crossing guard hiring as school ramps up becomes a major program we run, but also public education we like to share with the public so they know we need crossing guards and or where they can expect to see crossing guards. And then finally, we've got kind of a year-end wrap up with fall cleanup, early winter operations, and then our holiday schedule and some major recycling impacts that come up at the end of the year. There are 6 key questions that we ask ourselves at the forefront of every project. I don't want to read everything word for word, so I'll leave this up for a moment. This was in our 2024 review. It's been in the plan for the last 8 years, knowing that you may not memorize everything. I just want to note that this is in here, and without reading it word for word, the intent here is to make sure we're asking some critical questions that while we have a standard spreadsheet that I'll show you in a moment that we'll consult, we don't want to be so rote that we lose track of other things that may not just fit on a spreadsheet. So are people being disproportionately impacted? Are some people maybe being positively impacted? We need to find ways to talk to the community about that. But there's a host of things that come out of this that maybe lead us into larger, more comprehensive or different approaches to how we might choose to engage on a given project or initiative. One of the things that I think we were pleased that lived in this plan from 2017 and has taken a more prominent perch in the plan is asking the question about linguistic or cultural barriers, recognizing what we know about the changes in our community, again, pointing to the 2020 census, which was just that stark reminder of our growing community. And I have another slide where we'll speak a little bit more about that. So I don't want to leave that hanging out there too long. We have a host of really critical stakeholders we need to communicate with within the public. And this is a general list, not exhaustive, and not something we always need to kind of, not every organization needs to be reached out to every time, but it's a general list that we're consulting every time when we need to think about who needs to know about this road shutdown, who needs to know about a street redevelopment, who needs to know about some upcoming minor or major maintenance that may impact college operations, affordable housing programs, the business community, and the like. I've spoken a little bit about language access and just want to underscore some of the key specific things we added in here. One of the big things in talking to staff and colleagues around the department is we want to maintain flexibility in our approach in how we communicate and engage with the public, but at the same time, there are some areas where we need some more prescriptive approaches, this being one of them, language access. We are always willing to take best practices from REIB, who's managing the language access plan for the city. And as they continue to kind of think about centralizing services or standards, we've tried to put our imprint on how we want to do that unless and until there becomes a stronger centralized city effort. So one of them is we offer and want to offer more real-time support for the public. Every customer service window is going to have 20 translated languages that tell people how to get more information, and that translation and interpretation is available to them. Customer service teams across the department have access to Propio, used to be called telelanguage, which in real time allows access to an interpreter. And I should say in theory, real time. We've had pretty good luck at the Water Resources Department with a couple calls they've had to take in different languages. We have had very sparse luck in getting people to make use of the services, but in trying to connect with people to speak Spanish, for instance, that was real time, done on the fly with our customer service supervisor and myself to talk about recycling. So It does work. It's a good technology, and I hope it proves useful as the community grows more knowledgeable of the service. But yeah, we make that available. With AI evolving, with new tools evolving, the website has made use of a more advanced Google Translate widget. We hope the public can take advantage of these services, but if things emerge that are better, we will quickly adopt those in replacement of these. One other area that I feel very strongly about is trying to adapt to universal imagery. Words are important, language is important, but making use of imagery that everybody can instantly recognize across language, excuse me, is very important to us. So we've adopted, for now, what we're calling a universal symbol for language access, in hopes to convey to people how they can quickly access more information if they happen to come upon a no parking sign or a street sweeping flyer for fall or spring clean sweep, pulling out their phone, pointing at the QR code, and having that take them somewhere. We have a slate of vital translations that may connect people to. In some cases, if something's on the fly, or perhaps not a vital translation that we've yet gotten translated, that will at least connect them to that standard flyer we're now using with 20 different languages that say, if you need more information, information is freely available to you for translations or interpretation by calling this number. We're just trying to meet people as close to where they are as possible, specifically if there are any life safety or financial impacts that we don't want to hit them with based simply on language barriers. And so to that point, you'll notice any no swimming signage we need to use, we have shifted to the no swimming, kind of a more universal no swimming logo. We started with red signs that said notice. We realized that doesn't convey everything we need to convey off the bat, so we've added the no swimming logos to our no swimming signage. If there's an issue at the treatment plant that leads to us having to post beaches, same with no parking, we've adopted the no parking symbol everywhere we possibly can. So we're trying to make best use of imagery to convey what we need to convey without relying on language if there are linguistic barriers. And then finally, we have started a vital translation process at DPW where things like street sweeping, boil water advisories, those have been translated into multiple languages using Burlington School District's 7 most commonly spoken languages. CEDO at the time, now this service has shifted to REIB, also for a time once a year has been able to do another slate of translations. We'll see how that money shakes out, if that comes into the departments, if that stays at REIB, or if that's more limited in future years. But there's been a little bit of a citywide effort to have vital translations where documents or things the public really needs to know. And again, from our perspective, life safety, great financial implications, those have been the priorities for us to make sure we have vital translations available for. There's a lot of words on this, and this is more of a guideline, certainly an iterative guideline, and we'll look at the nitty gritty in a moment. But if you have dug into public engagement at all in the organizations you work with or come upon this, this is a very common kind of gradation of how public engagement could or should work, whether it's for an organization, a municipality, a state department, and how you decide how to communicate with the public, what the goals that you're intending to get through to the public with are, the level of engagement you expect or are offering the public depending on the kind of project. So we've just tried to break this out for our team into understanding what these kind of 5 levels of engagement are, the project types that we tend to manage, how they fit onto this gradation, what the goals are, and then what some of our example tactics are. So we can always come back to this, but we'll go to the slightly internal working document we have for the nitty gritty and how we break these projects out, what tactics we're relying on, for each of these project types, where they fit under, whether they're inform, consult, involve, collaborate, or empower, and then some example project types. And so we lean heavily on this at the beginning of the construction season, or certainly as other things emerge, This isn't the end all be all of all the spreadsheets we utilize. We have different breakouts for things like boil water advisories, traffic impacts, but this is a general guideline of how we try to work internally to figure out which tactics are being used. I tried really hard to figure out what are the key performance indicators. A lot of what I take to heart is feedback I get, whether it's from the commission, things we see on Front Porch Forum, the council, the public, but that is a lot of qualitative data. So it was really hard figuring out what the right quantitative data is, short of commissioning a rather large kind of statistically representative survey of the city. And we've done this past year a lot of different surveys and polling. And so it felt like, are we going to hit polling fatigue if we just want to go back out right now with a poll? Maybe the time is right. But a couple things I looked at were see-click fix. So SCF, issues closed within SLA. For those who aren't into the government acronyms, that basically means see-click fix issues closed within service level agreement. We set certain service level agreements internally for the major maintenance issues we manage at DPW, potholes, sweeping, snow plowing. We try to close issues within that service level agreement. And we have historically performed in the mid to high 70s, and I have a slide if you want to see the breakout of the last few years, but mid to high 70s, trying to set a higher benchmark, since in the past we've said let's try to hit 75%. We've relatively consistently hit that, so let's try to move above and beyond. Now we can certainly dig into some of the caveats here. These are issues that typically have short-term SLAs. If someone reports a capital repair need for a sidewalk, short of a safety issue, that's not going to be factored into this. That would be in a whole other kind of asset bucket that we would need to look at. There are issues as well. Have we forgotten to close an issue? That might negatively impact our SLA on the negative side. Have we closed an issue because our working foreman thought we got to the issue? That's rare, but certainly that could, we're relying on computer, us being on the computer data integrity. So there's going to be some positive and negative here, but for the most part, we think this is a pretty honest accounting of our responsiveness to the public when it comes to many of the kind of 2,000 or so issues that reach out to us about a year. Number two, I'm using Instagram followers as a social media proxy. We have intermittently done some advertising on social media, which has affected some of the other data that we've looked at. You may remember back in October 2024, we looked at impressions, things like that. And so the advertisements really skew a lot of that, where we'll generate quite a bit of impressions, but maybe doesn't lead to as many click-throughs or as many regular followers as we'd want. So using Instagram followers as a proxy, Facebook engagement has dramatically fallen off across the board for my colleagues and I who manage social media in the city. Instagram has not, so that's the main proxy. Maybe in a year or two we will talk about TikTok, but that's a social media proxy for now. Front Porch Forum minimum annual posts. We're not talking, unfortunately, about quality there. I don't know how to rank quality, but one thing I want to make sure is that we have a consistent presence on Front Porch Forum. If we dig into the numbers a little bit, you can see we've been around the 60 to 70 plus posts per year. And, it's hard to say what the right number is, but I think at least in these times, more communication is better. So let's try to bump up a little bit of our levels of communication on Front Porch Forum, averaging about 5 to 6.5 posts a month to get to 6 to 7.5 posts per month. And then finally, this is also a little bit more qualitative, but let's try to reach the traditional news media, since quite a number of the members of the public are mostly still following traditional news media, and try to generate one positive headline a month for the department on behalf of the city. Now, I believe the city is, as a whole, is going to exceed that mark, but as a department, I'd love to be able to contribute one really positive media headline on CAX or 7 Days that really shows interest in our work or highlights the great work that the team at DPW does. So these are some proxies for some of the goals that I tried to set forth at the beginning. I certainly think we can figure out if there are more specific things we need to measure or monitor going forward. Essentially, that is the plan that I wanted to present to you. I have some numbers if you wanted to dig into some of the performance indicators. Our responsiveness on C-Click-Fix, you can see kind of a moderate trajectory rise followed by essentially a leveling off. I think we are entering a period where we probably need another retraining on C-Click-Fix. There's a lot of data cleanup that is still underway from conversations we had with OIT, who's now managing more of the kind of granular backend, not so much the workflow of C-Click-Fix, but certainly more data cleanup is necessary. So we'll see where the numbers land after some of that happens. I mentioned, this might be of interest to folks, mentioned some using followers as a proxy. Started collecting DPW's Instagram followers back kind of before we were using it more regularly. And so I didn't collect other departments' data at the time. I'm trying to track that now just to see how we're doing in relation to other departments. You can see we are being dwarfed by Parks, who has a phenomenal social media account and has for a long time, or Instagram account, and has for a long time. But I am pleased to say that the percent change has been the same. Clearly, I believe we have a higher ceiling to hit every year, so I want to beat them. No offense to my awesome counterpart, Jules and Parks, but hopefully we can beat them. But we have had a tremendous percent, not quite year over year change, a little, year and change percent change, but hopefully we can continue that. This I didn't include as a key performance indicator, but it was of interest last time. So I've kept this here. I didn't get the numbers in time for 2025 to see where we've landed, but we have seen a lot of growth on VT Alert. It could be a proxy in terms of people taking interest in our work, but it could also be a proxy for how often we use it, how many issues we deem critical enough to use VT Alert for, et cetera. And then the Front Porch Forum posts, you can probably should have reversed this, but you can see we're kind of on a downward trajectory in terms of average per month, average per year. But perhaps my number of 80 is the right number where we just need to try to communicate more. Maybe that's the right thing until we're told otherwise. We don't want communication fatigue, but at the same time, there's a lot of interest in our work and we have a lot going on this coming year. So I will leave that there for now. That's what I've got. And certainly we're hopeful to hear any questions, feedback, and consider shows of support or offers to come back with changes. So we're happy to kind of engage in any way that you deem necessary.
Excellent. Thank you, Rob. I first just wanted to thank you and commend you for all of the amazing work that you do before this document and all the other communication stuff. So I think just a huge thumbs up.
Yeah. Thank you.
Commissioner, questions on this? Anybody would like to go first?
I can go if no
Yeah.
one else wants to. So Rob, I was looking back at my notes from our October 2024 meeting, and I noticed you had a lot of goals around metrics and stuff. So I appreciate that you have carried those forward and brought us that information. I think that's great. And I recall one thing we talked about at that meeting that I'd love to hear your perspective on is like, what is the department's position sort of on social media generally as an outreach tool? For me, it's sort of like iffy. Like I think it's important, but anyway. So I was just wondering if you could speak to that.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's one I've tried to think a lot about. When there is an urgent, I'll break it out into a few different buckets. When there's an urgent situation, it's pretty much all tactics on deck. And luckily we don't have a lot of those, but I recall the first citywide boil water event we ever had back in the South End, July 2019, if I recall. And it was like, wow, we weren't prepared for something that could be of that magnitude of life safety. Luckily, the results came back. There was not a life safety issue, but it was like, how do we get the word out? So social media still has quite an amount of ability to generate buzz and impressions, and itself is a proxy to reach the media. One thing I learned when we were using X more heavily, and certainly on Instagram now, is sometimes if you don't get a press release out, or if you just want to communicate with the public, that still is going to be a way to reach the media. So I found it to be a useful tool in a variety of ways. I don't consider it an end-all be-all because, for the first few years here on Facebook, it was really just a cesspool, a swarm of really negative comments. I think the tide's changed a little bit on Instagram. You get much less of that. So overall, we find social media to still be a really valuable tool to spread the word. I don't like to use it as the main way to share content specifically, but it is a great tool to share crisis communications, or in the other bucket I was going to talk about, highlight some of the good work. We do things like crossing guard posts. People love that content. I always wonder how far that gets us. We haven't seen from our advertisements, which we spent some money on a few summers ago on the downtown garage, on some of our job postings. We don't see a lot of outcome from that, but that's not to say that just getting the word out isn't also important. I do find more targeted social media really impactful. The New North End Facebook group is incredibly active. One of the counselors does often request us, if we send them kind of a heads up about something, to also post on there, which we will do at their request and sometimes beyond their request for street sweeping. That really has a significant echo chamber and kind of more of a targeted approach and an appeal. So I find a lot of value in that. There's not a lot of those. Like there is an Old North End Facebook group. We were a part of that, and then I think they limited it to kind of residents within the Old North End, so we don't get to play a role on there. But targeted social media has been fruitful. Considering Reddit in that bucket, Reddit's got a pretty potent kind of audience capture
I've seen those.
in Burlington.
I don't really go on Reddit that much, but I happened to be this week and I saw the BTV DPW correcting some misinformation in there. So
And those are some targeted areas where,
Yeah.
It's nice to not exhaust the community with messages from us, but I do think people like to see the city government responding when there are things. I think generally people want to support their city government. And so for things like that, why'd you make this parking change? There was another one that we responded to about the sidewalks related to the Champlain Parkway. Some of them are spalling, and we are responsive. If mistakes happen, if a contractor maybe, if we need to evaluate contractor work, we want to show the public we're responsive. So, if we put Reddit in that bucket, I think some of the
Now, seeing the data there. Parks, do you see their stuff on the sea caves and the skating? I'm sorry, I just followed Public Works now on Instagram.
just now.
Just, you know.
Now we're at 65.
Yeah. So how, you have your KPIs, but how do you evaluate the efficacy of your communications to the public? You mentioned a little bit, because there are different tools and different ways to communicate. I'm still one of the followers on Facebook. But right, if you have the tool in the New North End and that Facebook group, that's your kind of vital in-way for that. How are you evaluating? Because like Eliana said, it's also how do you best use your time?
Yeah. How do we evaluate the efficacy? That is something I wrestled with these KPIs. Short of, at some point maybe going to the public with a survey about the effectiveness of our services or our responsiveness. A lot of it is qualitative, and a lot of things I can surmise. Feedback we get from the commission or the public during specifically our commission meetings or TOOC meetings are ways when we hear we didn't know about that, or we hear, listen, I really disagree with the policy direction, but I'm glad I knew about it. Like those are the kinds of things we take to heart and we use to try to make process improvements. It's hard to post something on Facebook and see 50 likes, but 20 negative comments. I don't have a good barometer for, I tend to have a positive view of human nature, and I think a lot of people really love the city and love their city government, and I feel like the love that city government gets across the board on social media is a pretty good proxy that the city's doing a good job. But I don't have a good internal barometer to say for something like social media, what is the right approach, other than for me personally, I feel like I know it when I see it, and that's a terrible kind of standard approach to take. So I know that that's not a successful KPI. But it essentially is, how did the media cover our story? How did something go viral? How did that Reddit post turn out after we did get our correction on there? Those are some of the imperfect ways that I try to keep in my mind about, well, how is the public responding and accepting our information? Another thing I often do, and again, I'm sorry that this isn't as standard as I would wish it were, is we post something on Front Porch Forum. I will then follow that same neighborhood, or if it's a citywide post, do a search every day for about a week just to see what was the feedback. If there was no feedback, I usually take that to be a positive. If there was a lot of RE colons, I know, all right, we've touched a nerve. And again, sometimes that's the policy direction and not the communication direction. I've got the easy job. My colleagues who are changing policy or changing traffic regs have the harder job. I am certainly willing to take that feedback if in your experiences you've found other ways to gauge that. But a lot of it is, coming to the meetings, listening to the public forum at City Council, hearing what the stakeholders and decision makers have to say about our work, and by proxy, our efforts to engage or communicate, and then taking that to heart and then seeing how that fits in or doesn't fit into the work we're doing on the comm side.
Yeah, I mean, yes to all of that, and I think if we don't hear anything, we assume it's good news. And I've said this before, like we think about our infrastructure, like our pair of socks. You only think about your socks, so you get a hole in them. You're just obsessed about your socks, right? And that's when we hear from residents if there is something wrong. Is there then a way to garner, gather some positive feedback on functioning infrastructure, or on projects, or on emergency issues? You certainly have, heard it from us, like the boil water, or dealing with, and they're more neighborhood issues when, you're dealing with the water main break in winter. My neighborhood, knock on wood, we haven't had fun this year, but assuming you get some feedback on that isn't all negative. There's some positive in there. I just feel like it would, when you think about getting positive or helpful media headlines, it's also helping the public and helping us to remind the public to think about, like, if you've ever lived in anywhere else, like, you just thank God, like, I can turn the water on and get water that I can drink, and I can flush my toilet, and I can take a shower, really some of the basic things, and I can walk down my street. That's not sexy, but I think it's important. So how do we get, or how can we help you get to some of those?
I think I understand better now, and I think that kind of goes along with a goal that I want to strengthen for us, which is not only to do the good work, but to also show more of that. Now, I don't know how that translates into the right KPI to measure, but I agree with you that some of the, we might call it mundane, but it's really magical work. Making the faucets run, making the wastewater disappear, treating the wastewater, simply showing up to your crossing guard shifts 2 times a day to make sure kids get to school to and from safely. I do think that city government across the board, and certainly at DPW, we need to demonstrate that more to the public. I think social media is, as I mentioned to Commissioner Fox's question, that might be an area to do that, given that there's a low bar to get that up there. It's very image conscious, image heavy, and it, you can generate good feelings and good buzz that way. But I would agree, and I think if there's other ideas within the bandwidth we have, I think absolutely, yeah.
Thanks. I mean, I've been on the commission long enough to see this this progression, and I'm grateful.
Thank you.
Commissioner Davis?
Yeah.
Yeah, to echo everyone else, like, great to be still working on this, especially in the face of the challenges the city's having and the fact that they've not made as much progress as they hoped on their end for this sort of thing. I have several things here. They're not really in order, so I'm just going to try to go through them. But for one, I think on the signs, using the universal symbols, I think inverting the way the sign reads might be more effective, meaning a much larger universal symbol, since that's the thing that you're anticipating everyone's going to kind of know, and then a smaller set of text and notice and the other thing that's essentially conveying the not essential information, but like the nice to know information. So I would recommend that, not knowing a ton about how people use it. But something else I would think is that if it isn't too cost prohibitive, every kind of sign when they're being printed, not only having a translation QR code, but also like some sort of feedback QR code or something that someone can either say like, yep, I read this, or yep, I like that I'm informed about this, something like that. That could be cost prohibitive. So if it is, I wouldn't worry about it, but just an idea that if you're going to put the sign out there anyway, maybe it's an opportunity. In terms of the KPIs, I think you were mentioning how like it's hard to come up with like a great KPI for certain things, and it definitely is. And I would actually say that advertisers have to do a lot of advertising about their own capabilities, claiming that they do a great job, whether they do or not. And so there's not a ton of evidence that that Geico commercial drove a bunch of insurance sales either, and yet they're paying millions of dollars to do it. So like, I would not be hard on yourself at all that it's hard to come up with great KPIs for these things. And it's really like, I think we're kind of only going to know the spikes in engagement where it reaches a level where people are so excited or happy about something that they're going to respond, or so disappointed or frustrated. And that's just the nature of the beast. So I wouldn't feel too bad. I think your KPIs are probably better than some Fortune 500 companies out there. And then the other thing about that is that we have a lot of external forces acting on us, in the sense of the federal government, the state government, us being kind of city people, and just the world in general. And so like, just because someone wasn't informed about a particular thing, it could be not that the department did an insufficient job of reaching out, but rather that there's so much else going on that people wanted to be aware of that they simply missed it. And so I think I think from my perspective, you guys are doing a fantastic job. And I think it's great to always like have the viewpoint that things can be improved and people can be informed better. But I don't think it's, like, not every lack of informing someone is a failure. It might just be happenstance. Then in terms of the Instagram like growth rate as a proxy, I was curious about maybe visits to the website. I know in the last year with the huge website changeover, that broke a lot of links and like probably just wreaked havoc on the kind of informatics and behind the scenes analytics. But I think that might be useful. I don't really use social media, so I'm not a good person for that sort of analysis. But
Yeah, we that's at the forefront of my mind. We don't have the direct connection to the Google Analytics that we used to have, because that used to be a regular part of all of the data that I would collect on this kind of topic. And we were often, as a department page, one of the most visited. The parking page, as you might imagine, was after the police, I think the most visited site after the homepage and the police. So we used to keep that data pretty closely. We don't have access for some reason right now. I think we're still working that out with the OIT. So right now it's more of a wish than but I agree with you. I think that gets to a lot of things, like, are people coming to learn about our work? Are people clicking through from something? How are they finding the information? All of that has been helpful in the past. So totally agree there.
okay, awesome. Kind of on the like negative side, capturing some negative things, I was wondering if maybe looking at negative headlines might still be a KPI, like essentially have positive and negative, and that's telling maybe kind of what the ratio is. And again, there are other factors involved, so I would not take it personally when there are negative headlines, hopefully, but that's evidence of something occurring and might be worth tracking. And then in terms of the C-Quick Fix SLA, I think I kind of generally understand that different types of projects have different types of like turnaround times and things like that. One of the slides you had up, which you don't need to put it up again, but it had minimum notice,
Yes.
I guess, expectations. Is that something that isn't worth tracking because you just meet it 100% of the time? Or is it something that could be worth like seeing, was the department able to meet the minimum notice that it kind of goal it set for itself?
It's a great question. We, the slide you're referring to was kind of that internal spreadsheet slide that we set out for project managers and myself to go over, like, all right, we've got paving season coming up. For instance, this is the amount of time at a minimum we are going to be communicating to residents about what's coming before them. We don't track that specifically in terms of, all right, we paved 7 streets this year. 4 of those 7 we gave 2 weeks notice to. 3 of those we gave less than. I think it could be useful. I think that gets back to the question of, are residents finding the information they're getting from us useful and at a useful and appropriate time? I would say more often than not, we're beating almost all of those pretty rigorously, like in terms of paving, we send out letters pretty shortly actually to homeowners about the upcoming paving season. Part of that's to let people know about some work that they can get done in advance. But generally we're mostly beating that. I think it's a good question though. Back to overall, how do we measure success here is if we did get the Front Porch Forum message out to a big sidewalk reconstruction a week in advance, is that enough time? I mean, I think that is a key question for the public. We don't often get feedback, at least the last few years, that people have felt uninformed about the work. Obviously, there's always kind of things that crop up. I'm moving on the stake. Can you help? But I think that's one I'd like to think more about in terms of how to collect data on that and how to judge what the useful time frame is. Similarly to C-Click Fix, if we say 3 days for a pothole, is that the right time frame? And what's in our bandwidth to achieve?
Okay, gotcha. You mentioned homeowners there. Did you mean residents generally?
For the paving letter that goes out in the early season, we send it to homeowners, and then residents get a round of notification as we get closer. The homeowners are the ones that generally are responsible for making any water or service line improvements in advance. So that's why they're getting, say, a late January, early February notification. That list is always about, as you just heard from the team, about 90-ish% baked in, but it does occasionally change. So we try not to be too aggressive in early season outreach. And then as we get within that 2-week window where we have more certainty from a contractor, that's when paving signs will be going out, Front Porch Forum will be going out, communication to some of those stakeholders we mentioned. That will usually happen a little earlier in the season, but at a minimum, we'd like to, make sure the colleges know, hey, we'll be there in 2 weeks to do a major paving project. But,
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, that totally makes sense. And that includes then just owners of like the buildings in general. So a business, building
Exactly.
owner, et cetera. Okay. Yeah, that sounds awesome. That makes sense.
I'll say, sorry to interrupt. I'll say generally we try to make that as a minimum. For instance, on the lead up to Great Streets Main Street and Great Streets Bank and Cherry. Yes, of course, we're trying to meet. We're well exceeding all of these to let people know about work, and it is to the property owners, but it's also to businesses who may not own their own property. So we try to exceed this when possible and certainly where relevant. So making sure businesses who may not own their property know about work or plans is still a major part of this. These are, again, just to underscore, we try to make them the minimums in terms of notification.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. And then the last comment I had was about the Front Porch Forum posts and kind of like, just trying to think about like what they really are, because I don't think they're always simple notices. Sometimes they're more about kind of explaining, like with the bonding vote, last year. So I wonder if maybe breaking that out when you're thinking about it might be helpful, where like the kind of notice is maybe kind of different in a way, and then it's like you might already have that copy, so it's maybe a little bit more straightforward to do, whereas like something that's more informational, not only a notice, might both take more work for you. So I think it's like worth thinking about that aspect, but then also demonstrate kind of that not everything is like just this is happening, that there's kind of an opportunity for more engagement, I think, from the non-notice type posts. Yeah, so thank you very much. I think this is great and goes like, I think way above and beyond already. So any improvements I think are just exceptional. So thank you for all your work.
Thanks.
Any other commissioner comments?
Just real quick, I just wanted to point out that I think I've been on the committee since 2014, pre public engagement position and everything. So I just want to commend you on the huge improvements that you've made here in Public Works and just in general for all of the things that the city depends on DPW for, letting them know about and taking into stride, and with all the changes in the media output too. I mean, everything. If this goes to TikTok, I'm probably not going to be on there. I did have to check to make sure that I was following you on Instagram, and I am. So, and I was going to unfollow Parks just to see, but
You need to sabotage that.
I won't do that. Just let everybody know. But yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Great work.
Excellent. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you, commissioners.
Oh,
Commissioner Manchester.
what could I say? The public is being engaged like never before. Happy to see huge increases, especially in VT alerts, subscribership. Obviously, those are the most important updates, as well as social media and all those other forms of engagement. As I was looking through the little flow chart, all the different levels, inform, consult, and so on, I got something at the base level, the inform part. In terms of the actual design of the greenbelt signage, when there's things like sidewalk reconstruction or smaller kinds of maintenance, perhaps there could be a little redesign in that area just to give people a little more information about what's happening. I recognize that when there's smaller projects, right, there's a lot, it's subject to a lot of change, but at least describing where is the work going to be done, right? Little map or however it might be. This is where your walking trip might be affected. So that could be a nice little improvement with the projects that'll be going on for this paving year that we got some information about just a little earlier today in the packet.
Great feedback. Thank you. One of the things we've tried to do in the past is to reuse those signs.
Yeah, I figured.
But there are still ways. Maybe we can, different kinds of tape we can apply. We also have some more printing capability. I like the idea a lot. And, there's always time for a refresh. In fact, we have to refresh them this year anyway. So maybe there's an opportunity. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Great. Thank you again, Rob.
Thank you, commissioners.
Moving on to the planBTV 2050. Director Spencer, I don't know if you wanted to kick it off, or we touched on it a little bit earlier, I think. But
Yes, and thanks, Chair Damiani, for getting the message out to commissioners earlier today. So I am very excited about the first ever comprehensive plan that's going to merge 4 different planning projects for the city together. And I think that gives us the greatest chance to have synergies between our plans, the economic development plan, the transportation plan, the parks plan, the comprehensive plan. So we're looking for a rep from this great group to serve on the advisory committee, and would welcome Commissioner to serve in that role. As was sent out, my understanding is it's about a year-long commitment, and there was kind of a general sense of time commitment in that email that I don't.
1.5 hours.
1.5 hours a month?
Yep.
So would welcome some member of this commission, if so available, to join us.
I will do it if no one else wants to do it.
I was going to do it if no one else wanted to do it.
I was going to self-nominate myself if no one else wanted to nominate me or anybody else, I suppose.
Look at this indifference here.
All right. Does anyone really want
Who
to?
really
Do you
wants
want
to do it?
I would like to nominate myself to take on this advisory role position.
Awesome.
Great.
Thank you.
Excellent. The one piece that I think I'll just highlight from what I put in my email is just, I think, after the meetings, if you don't mind, I think there's a couple of us that will be there as part of our work as well. But
Yeah. I had a feeling.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think it would just be helpful to provide updates for the full commission, so folks can
Certainly.
after one of those meetings, just to make sure we know what's coming up.
All right. Thank
Um,
you.
And I'll just add, if you have to miss one or something, if you just email us, we can
Yeah.
try to have someone at least make it.
That's a good
Understood.
idea.
Because my concern was, depending on, I think it's, there's going to be 20 people, and depending on when that meeting lands. So, yeah, feel free to reach out to us.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, fellow commissioners.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So this shows an action motion to, do we have to approve?
Oh,
It was an option. Yeah, I think the chair has the prerogative to appoint. It sounded unanimous.
Thank you, Dan.
There you go.
Moving on to the director's report.
Excellent. Hitting a couple items from the printed director's report. Recycling next steps. Thank you for all the time you took in November to delve into the issue of the future of the city's residential recycling collection service. We presented to the council after your meeting and gave an update on your vote and perspective, and the Transportation, Energy, and Utilities Committee's perspective. They had voted 2-1 to keep recycling operations in-house. We at DPW have found that the 7-year contract bid was competitive from Casella, and are progressing with negotiations with them. And the plan would be to return to the council with a proposed contract, hopefully in the next month. And we have been working with the union in close coordination with them and with the administration as part of the FY27 budget. By contracting, it does appear to be more cost effective for the city, and also allows our staff to focus on the core responsibilities of our work, including. I'm excited to continue the negotiations with Casella. So they've gone well so far, and we'll keep you updated, but we plan to go to the council with a proposed contract next month. Okay. And then second, I said I would give a short update on unaccepted streets. This is one of those issues we talked about that may generate some critical comments in the public realm. That said, after serving in this role for 12 years, there are housekeeping items that are critically important that we address after years of trying to do our work without addressing these issues head on. And the reality is there are a couple dozen streets that are private and or unaccepted that the city and the homeowners do not have a clear understanding of who owns the street and who is responsible for maintenance. And this keeps getting in the way when we try to do projects on a street. We had a pump station on Fletcher Place that we had to replace at the end of the street, but there was an argument about who owned the street. So that made the pump station installation a longer and more complex project. North Cove Road, a dirt road up off the end of North Avenue, where residents have asked for material to improve the road that we have provided in the past, but it is a private road. Is that a service that we are prepared to provide going forward? the back and forth and the inefficiencies that I have seen in all across the city has gotten to a point where I believe this is the right and important conversation to have. The body that decides whether a street should be accepted or not is the city council. As a result, we made the decision that we should focus through the city council's subcommittee of the Transportation Energy Utilities Committee to have this discussion and work being done. That said, I want the commission to be up to speed, as whatever decision the council makes will likely require the commission to make regulatory changes on streets they choose to accept. So this is a controversial topic. People who live on roads that have received some public services but are private roads, can have the perspective that they pay taxes and deserve the services. So it will take a process to talk through ownership, expectations, responsibilities, and you have my commitment to take the time needed to have this conversation, fully engage the impacted stakeholders. It is important to note that in an original communication that our department put out, there was an October 1st, 2026 deadline for ending municipal services on private and unaccepted streets that were not clearly public. That date came from risk management folks in the city who were concerned about city resources going to private assets and the liability of working on property that wasn't the city's. Since that has gotten out there, I have gotten in front of this and said publicly that we will take the time needed and we will push that October 1st date back. Yes, there's liability, but the process needs to be robust, and we can't have these difficult conversations if people are feeling boxed into a timeline that is making them nervous. So we will push back that date, and the Transportation Energy Utilities Committee will be meeting on the 27th this month to continue that work.
Any commissioners have any questions on items that were in the director's report?
I do.
The full city council, and it will be entirely their decision whether to authorize the contract to be executed.
And when do you expect that to go before the council? Like,
Next month.
okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Can I ask a kind of related question to that? I so thought of the recycling folks after one of the ice storms that we've dealt with, and it was it was a Monday. So recycling and just dealing with the level of plowing and salting and management. Has any of that been clearly communicated to the TUC, or I guess that decision's made? Their vote.
Yes, the union was at the last TUC meeting where where recycling was discussed, and the counselors got to talk directly to union staff about the balance and challenge of managing winter maintenance and recycling pickup, and it was a good conversation.
Okay.
I think there's philosophical perspectives about the value of municipal services and union municipal workers. And we don't disagree. We have a strong and great union workforce. My goal is to hone the breadth of responsibility to an area that we can do fewer jobs better than trying to do more jobs with insufficient resource.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
I had a question.
Yeah.
With the disputed streets, I guess is the idea that proportionately the owners of the properties adjoining the street are those that own the street? Is that like for I guess most of them, at least, if there's no like weird developer situation?
Yes, I would say that there's a variety of situations, but yes, sometimes the developer did not follow through with dedicating the street to the city and the city accepting it. It could be that the residents, that there was a subdivision and no street was established. Could be that it was always assumed to be private, but there is no condo association, so therefore there's no record of how the street was going to be maintained. There's a whole range of challenges. Each street is going to be its own research project.
Okay, I was afraid of that. In terms of the kind of provision of services, it's unfortunate, but I feel like if people are not willing to give up the street, which I guess, like, what is giving up the street if you have a street that functions versus not? But it seems odd, I guess, the people that want the city to provide services but don't want it to be a city street. So I don't know. I'm confused by that, but I'm sure they have their reasons, but hopefully it'll all kind of come out.
There are legitimate perspectives across the board. I'd say the more common perspective that private property owners have is that they would be happy to have the city accept the street. The challenge is that the city does not want to accept a street that's not up to standard. We don't have the resources to bring them up to standard.
Okay, I see.
So the disconnect is more of frustration on the private property owners' part, that they want more to be done and they want the city to do it, and the city saying, we can't take over an asset that's been under-maintained.
Okay, so it's mostly they want the city to take the streets.
I'd say in many cases.
Than a sustainably funded municipal operation. If I remember correctly, at the November meeting, in fact, the two projected rates over a budget year were quite simple. And when you take into account, I forget, the several funds in the city, it's really only several $1,000s different. So is there a change in the negotiations with Casella that may have happened in the meanwhile? Like, what is the financial difference between these two options looking like now?
Right, thank you, Commissioner Mazzano. At our presentation late last year, we were looking at a budget, and I appreciated your comments at the time. I think the financial difference between the two models was $140,000 or so, and you rightly identified that a chunk of that difference was that there were overhead costs that if we kept the service in-house, that the in-house model would be covering. So in essence, there was some virtuous benefit of keeping recycling in-house. The savings that I've projected, somewhere between $140,000 and $250,000, is shifting not so much through the Casella negotiations, and clearly we'd have to bring back the terms of whatever is negotiated to the full public and city council. But the range in savings depends on how much savings we could benefit from internally at DPW by not having the service in-house. Could we save management FTEs? Could we rearrange our work flows internally? If customer service currently gets a lot of missed recycling pickup complaints, if those don't come to us anymore but go to Casella, could we adjust our customer service structure? All those pieces are kind of leading into that range of savings between $140,000 and $250,000. To your point, if you take the $90,000 of indirect payment that was in the budget, then the savings would go from like $60,000 to $200,000. It would be, or $150,000. It would be less than the range I originally gave.
Right. Okay, I think I understand. I'll be keeping an eye on this, as well as the unaccepted streets conversations at the 2 committee meeting later this month.
Yeah.
So I do have one question there. Say October 1st comes along and the city decides to end public services on all unaccepted and private streets. What does that mean? No plowing. What else? Like,
Sure. Most unaccepted streets do not receive public services. I believe it's a majority. There are many streets though,
Yeah.
that do receive some level of public service, and those public services include plowing. At times, it can be pothole filling. As I referenced North Cove Road, they requested material for grading
Right.
the road. And then there's the issue of the subterranean utilities. And this is a very tricky issue where normally and typically the lateral from the main to the house is predominantly the responsibility of the homeowner because that lateral is there to serve that private property. If it's a water service or it's a sewer lateral, the purpose of that infrastructure is to serve that private parcel. It is the city's position that if it's a private road, then the assets under that road, unless otherwise designated through an easement or some other, unfortunately have the record keeping that we do now have from assets installed 100 years ago.
all right. Okay. A lot of thoughts, but I will definitely come back to it. So, of the 55 unaccepted and private streets, basically none of them are up to the complete standard, right? Because if they were, the city probably already would have taken ownership of them, right? So even like Iranistan Road or Chittenden Drive, which, connect to the city's grid, right? Seem like they're kosher and everything. They're also not up to standard, right? That's a across the board kind of thing. They're deficient in some way, and that's why the city hasn't taken them on as public rights of way.
Yeah,
Right?
I would say that each street is along the continuum. There are some streets that look much more like city streets that have curbing and have sidewalk, and other streets that may just have a road paved or unpaved. It's not, even if a street was up to standard, but no one dedicated it for the city to accept, then we wouldn't have accepted it. So it takes both the owning party to say, we want you to accept it, and for the city council to say, yes, we will accept it. So it is possible that some of the 55 streets, when we review them, we may see one or two up to standard and say, we're willing to accept it without improvement. Based on the ones I've looked at, I doubt there's going to be one that
All
we
right.
say are fully up to standard. But the city council has, or at least the TUC has said to us that they want to explore the concept of us not requiring streets to be fully up to standard before accepted, because they may have been up to standard when they were constructed 50 years ago. My argument is that, well,
Yeah, I don't have a time machine. I don't have my time machine ready.
so these are going to be policy discussions we need to have.
All right. Well, sounds like it's going to be a long year, and I hope, at least in the meanwhile, the services that are being offered are still there for people as much as the city is able to. So thank you.
Continue to the greatest extent we can while we have these discussions.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Moving on to commissioner comments. Any commissioners have items for things that we haven't discussed this evening?
The New North, the survey for North Avenue. There was an email or discussion about possibly pushing it out after the new year.
Yes. You're talking about for this
For
traffic
the
calming
traffic calming by Flynn School.
Flynn School.
It's out.
That is out.
Okay.
I thought you would have been copied on that. I'm sorry.
No, that's
a
out.
copy of it.
Okay, great,
Can
thanks.
you send that to the whole commission,
Yeah.
please?
Thank you. And thanks for getting that out.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Any other commissioner comments?
I have a quick one. I kind of brought this up before, but I had a recent additional experience with it, which is on the Champlain Parkway when there's a train going, it just disabling all the lights. It seems I was stuck like trying to turn left onto Home Avenue and still had a red and everything, even though the train had nothing to do with me
Right.
turning left onto Home Avenue.
Mhm.
So in particular, right now, maybe that's a condition that people can like either deal with in their own way or tolerate. But I think once the full Champlain Parkway is in operation, it's going to become a more serious issue.
Yeah.
So I think
Okay.
getting ahead of it would be advantageous, but at least being aware of it so that can be addressed or and I don't know,
Yeah.
is this something that there's like a city ordinance or something that is like creating that condition?
It's an engineering guidance that is informing that direction, and I don't know if it is a standard or guidance. I need to do more work with my team to understand the intersection preemption when there's a train in the area.
I know we had the design team looking at that. I don't know if that's
Yeah.
involved, but they're aware of.
Yeah.
'Cause I brought this up about Flynn.
Yeah.
Because by City Market,
Yeah.
it gets really bad. And as Commissioner Davis brought up, there are movements that can happen that have nothing to do with
That
the
has no
train.
conflict.
Like
Right.
the bus is just trying to get back to GMT. There's no reason why there should be a whole queue of buses that are just trying to go straight.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, they're not going to be able to turn right to get back to GMT once they get to Homa Avenue, but
Hopefully by the time, yeah.
yeah, but
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, so sorry to interrupt
Yeah.
you. I
No, no,
agree,
no.
and I think the commission would appreciate a little update on that at some
Yeah.
point.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think as
That's
the,
fair.
just to add on to it, as the, whenever the date gets finalized of when the parkway is gonna open, I think
Yeah.
trying to nip this particular thing in the butt before then would be
Yeah.
helpful to not create additional negative experience.
Mhm.
It's a good suggestion about doing a little briefing for the commission as we get closer to the opening of the parkway, and that could be a key element of that briefing.
And to the extent that we would need to do anything about the light thing, I don't think we would, but about the Champlain Parkway
Right.
lights, just like, happy to take that on. So
Yeah.
don't be shy about that one.
Good suggestion.
Any other commissioner comments? Commissioner Matei?
Yeah, a couple. Sticking around in the Home Avenue area, I just got a comment from another resident of Burlington regarding, I guess, an accessibility issue, especially at the Home Avenue and Pine Street bus stop on the number 5 line. It seems like there's basically no sidewalk there, and I received a picture showing dozens and dozens of footsteps of,
Yeah.
people walking from that bus stop basically to the corner to a large busy intersection for now at least, right? Without what feels like a good standard. And I was looking back through old Google Maps, is that Street View, and saw that there was a repaving that happened in 2019. And I was wondering, was a sidewalk ever considered for the east side of Pine Street, at least between the bus stop and the 4-way intersection with Home Avenue? Because it seems like a pretty big hole, right? It's
Right.
yeah.
Yep. I don't know,
Okay.
but we can find out.
All right. Fantastic. And I guess the other thing, also a similar accessibility concern that was brought to my attention was regarding, I guess, piles of snow at areas in the center of the city where there's tactile strips on the sidewalk for the visually impaired. I understand that sometimes they're too close to one another. So perhaps giving a little more breadth between where a tactile strip ends, right at the edge of the curb that slopes downward to the street, and where the snow actually is piled, especially in the most center areas of the city, could be good. And the exact corner that this happened seemed to be Bank Street and South Winooski Avenue, just by City Market. So really in these really central areas, just trying to ensure that the standards that, we are, maintaining these places is good, because that is the middle of our city. And, I don't like to see these kinds of things happen. Just 2 thoughts there. But overall, I think, you know, we are doing good stuff as a city, and I'm happy to play my part as a member of this commission. So thank you.
One other brief thing, just with the extreme cold coming later in the week, is there anything about that is happening, like people need to be aware of, or there's more intensive services or something?
Yeah, I'll start and turn it over to Rob. The city is setting up the cold weather shelter at Miller Center and has announced, I think, 4 concurrent dates in a row for the shelter.
Sorry, does Public Works is
Yes.
directly involved in that?
We are not directly involved in the shelter being set up, but
Okay.
with the cold coming up, the area where we are most involved, and I actually had multiple conversations with our water distribution team today. With the low snow cover and the cold weather, we're going to see the frost line go much deeper, and that is likely to lead to stress on our water system. So it would not surprise me to see some breaks in the next couple of weeks. So our team is trained, we're getting the equipment, make sure our equipment's in top shape, and that we are ready to respond. We have on-call contracts with a couple large contracting companies if we are unable to, if we don't have the right equipment. If it's too deep or too big, we can have ECI and SDI on contract for the response. So that's our biggest vulnerability in this cold weather.
Great.
Director Spencer hit the most important ones. We published on social media today, and it'll be in Front Porch Forum tomorrow, because I don't think it'll have published today, some of the best practices for you to do at your house if you have any pipes that might be at risk of exposure to cold weather. Insulate them, eliminate drafts, keep cabinets open. Make sure your basement, if it's not insulated or gets below freezing, you know, you have a way to keep your pipes warm. So just a heads up if you want to look for best practices.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah.
I think my only comment is, you know, I think citywide there's a big conversation around the budget, and I'm curious if you could touch on how, on what you can as it relates to DPW and sort of ways that I think, again, this commission can help advocate for things as you sort of navigate that for DPW.
Yes, thanks for your interest, and if you'd be interested, we could do an agenda item on our financial picture. Our expense budget is around $11 million a year on the general fund side. We have $6 million in parking and traffic, and then water is over $20 million in our operating budget, and then there's capital budgets on top of that. The general fund budget, $11 million of expenses. That said, we pull in 7 or 8 million in revenues. So we are quite a large contractor, which I am very pleased with. The challenge is that then we really need to make sure we're doing billable work. And so some work is not billable. Examples of not billable work are things like if we don't have a grant to put in a bike ped improvement or traffic calming, that can be unbillable work. Picking up couches that are left on the street after student move out is unbillable work. And so we're trying to struggle, you know, when we have to pull someone off recycling and off of a billable job and do recycling, we lose some billable work. So all of that to say that we're really trying to build a budget that preserves our staff, because our staff is our greatest resource, but amplifies our billable work and tries to focus on key areas of our mission critical public service. It is a challenge. The city has a $10 to $12 million gap. We are one of the larger general fund departments. We've been asked to look at cutting our net impact on the general fund by 5 and 10%. And when wages are going up, that means significant cuts in other areas. So I'll have more to announce soon, but we're trying to look creatively at how we deliver service. You know, on the parking services front, we're looking at implementing license plate recognition technology I have met with the union today and said that our intent is to continue to staff at our present staffing levels for parking attendants, but we could do more enforcement. We could offer new products that generate new revenue and help the net profit or the performance of the parking services team through the implementation of that technology. So,
Great.
Work in progress.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sorry, just a very brief.
Sure.
With the couch removal and things like that, I'm wondering if it would cost money to take it to the solid waste disposal, right? Like a private citizen doing that. I'm wondering if maybe like putting a call out to people doing that and it being free that weekend or something might reduce the non-billable work. Even if people just volunteer to grab it
I
from
can
like-
chime in on that.
Yeah, yeah.
The University of Vermont does two, they call them student move-out projects, SMOPs, one
Yeah.
on Buell and one on Loomis, where it's pretty much just that, unless it's a piece of crap that they put on the green belt. And then we have whichever trash hauler they contract with. I still do them even though I'm retired, for maybe $10 or $15 rather than having to transport it off to Chittenden Solid Waste District and pay a higher weight thing. So they do that twice, but just like everything, there's so much going on. It's finals and so forth, and some students are actually graduating and getting to move out. They're not thinking about this and they miss it,
Yep.
and that's when the stuff ends up on the green belt.
Gotcha.
I
And
will just add that I know outside of the college movement, some city councilors have worked, and I'm assuming with city
Yeah.
staff helped arrange it even outside of those times. I know some of mine in the Old North End have tried to do that, at least in warm
Community
weather.
cleanups.
Yeah, so I think that's
Yeah.
a great thing for all of us to ask our, city councilors to help organize that. That's a good
Yeah.
approach to that.
awesome. And then very last thing, in terms of the KPIs and outreach and everything, I think telling people best practices with the cold weather for protecting their water systems and pipes is a great example of something that if it works, you're not going to hear from anyone. But it's fantastic that that information is out there for people because would be horrible to have to deal with. So I think
Yeah.
that's a great thing that we're never going to know.
I'm going to respond on front porch.
That's great.
I'm gonna hop on Instagram.
Awesome.
Jim's going to do a TikTok dance.
I'll Snapchat. Yeah.
With that, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Oh.
Second.
Well, no, instantaneously.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Great.
Meeting adjourned, 8:15.
All right.